Welcome to Allies or Enemies. I'm Jess.
And I am Sean, and today we are looking at Kutna Hora, which is published by CGE and designed by, and I apologize if I'm not getting these perfect, Ondrej, Bystoň, Petr, Čáslava, and Pavel, Jarosch. And this copy was supplied by the publisher.
And we hadn't heard of Kutna Hora before the game coming out, but it is based on a historical place. It's the City of Silver, and it was over 800 years ago that silver was first discovered in the region. And it didn't take long before it was producing 1/3 of Europe's silver. So pretty impressive.
Yeah, so it's based on a real place, and people here have told us that it's beautiful as well. Like, we talked about this to a few folks at Essen, and they were like, oh, I went there on a school trip, and it was so nice. So it also seems like somewhere we want to visit in real life, but for now, let's visit it in board game and start off with how it plays.
In Kutna Hora, players competitively build the City of Silver together. On your turn, you will choose 2 of the cards in your hand, and then use the action on the top, or bottom, of each of those cards. These actions include building mines, claiming the rights to build buildings, claiming plots of land to build those buildings on, and building those buildings, which will do stuff like increase your production of different goods, and increase population, which can move market prices down or up. If you build public buildings, it might also impact taxes, make patricians available, or gain you a token that lets you build the cathedral, which brings us to the 5th action, which is spending tokens to build the cathedral, which gets you bonuses. Or you can take an income action, where you gain money for the goods you make times their current market value, and if a patrician is available, put them into play. These guys gain all players' points at the end of each round if certain criteria are met. Finally, there is also a joker action that lets you do any of the above at a cost. Most of these things will cost you coins or resources, which you have to buy from the market at whatever the current value is, which is always shifting. At the end of the game, players gain points for the amount of income they can create, their place on the reputation track, extra stuff they have left, controlling a majority in each row of the mines, and how many icons on the buildings they own match the buildings around them. And then the greatest builder of Kutna Hora is named.
So that's how it plays, but how does it feel? And I think the main thing really to talk about here is these guys, because this is such an interesting, innovative device in the game. And actually, if you want to check out the publisher, the designer diaries for this, it's one of the few times that I've done that just to learn about this, because the early versions of this are insanely complex. It's like these crazy, like Da Vinci-esque rings that are connecting and you're turning around. It's really something else. This is such an elegant marketplace system.
And how it works is, you saw in the how it plays that you can build various buildings and stuff, and all of that will manipulate that market. And so there might be times when you're increasing the notch, and that means that there is a lot more available. So usually the price will go down, but also the population cards will go to the next one. Yeah, the cards
go behind.
Yeah, and when that happens, that might lead to the prices going up because there's more people wanting more things. And you never exactly know. We're not going to memorize all 40 cards in all the different states based on the notches. So it's sometimes a change of the card will be like, ooh, look at the price now. Other times it will stay the same, which is really interesting.
Yeah, I really like that about this, because you know that moving the cards will eventually move it up. And so you want to do something, especially for this guy here. I found this was me a lot of the times when we played. But I want to do something to push these back and push these back. And I'm just hoping, please go from 3 to 4. Please go from 5 to 6. Because then when you do your income turn, it's based on the amount of the stuff you've got times this. So as you get more stuff, this goes down. So then you got to get this back up. And it has played, we've played this like 5 times now. And it has played so differently depending on what stuff we own. Because only one player can build half the buildings. And who actually builds it. Because Jess, last time we played, would not build wood. and everything got outrageously expensive.
Well, because if you are the owner of the building and when you build it, you're increasing the supply, meaning the price is going to drop. And you don't necessarily want the price to drop because that will change your income. So it's this tough balance of making sure you have some so you can still get the income for it, but not having too many where it drops too much. So I just gave it a test to see if I keep wood priced high, what does that change? And it changed a lot. It made like so many things more difficult.
Yeah, it made life very, very difficult. And so there was a lot more mining. This is actually, we just finished playing it for our 5th time and just messed with the market. And so we did a lot more mining this time because this was so expensive to build these buildings that we did this, but it was still fun. Like that, it changed it, and it was a little frustrating at times when I was like, I really want to make this like silver depository thing, but it was still fun to be able to do this and just like eke out my income and build it up so I can build something, and it felt like a big event when I actually built something versus other games when this has been packed and this has had a lot less on it.
Well, and I think because the market value impacts everybody, that even if you're finding it frustrating to build, so is everyone.
Yeah.
So I think that makes a big difference. So I think the market is definitely one of the key factors, and it's going to take you like a game to wrap your head around.
At least.
Yeah. So when we first were introduced to this, it was at UKGE, and we did a demo of a couple of rounds, and we felt like it was this really big, complex game. And then since we've played it, we realized it wasn't as like heavy as we thought, which I kind of appreciated, because on your turn, your actions are actually really simple. It's just a card play, and they've done, each card has 2 different actions. Mm-hmm. And so you almost have to plan out your whole round, because if you end up playing a card that has the same action you want to do later, but you play those early, you won't be able to necessarily do it later. So that double-sided card makes it interesting too.
Yeah, it does. And you're right, even though the card thing sounds like it's heavier, and it is a really interesting decision because all of the actions are on those cards twice except for the Cathedral and the Joker action, which means that you're going to be able to do things as long as you chain them right. But even with that, it is way lighter than I remembered it being. It's not a light game. This is like in the heavier part of the mid-weight, I would say, like a Lost Ruins, maybe a smidge more than that, but around that weight, I would say. So this isn't gonna totally melt your brain, and it's really way easier to set up, way easier to learn than I had expected.
Yeah, and the rule book, I like that they included a little bit of the history as well.
Yes.
So it has a bit about the Kutna Hora, the city itself, but then also the different guilds. So if you're interested in that, they have included it in the rule book. The other key thing to mention, I think, is the components and look of the game. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, it looks beautiful. So it's got these little houses and these little miners, and they're like these like 1200s, what you would picture a miner to be like. They are not well protected. They just have a cloth hat on, and these little houses are great. All of the buildings look really nice. It looks nice when you flip them. The one thing I'll say, I hate this box. It's just so plain, and everything else is so nice. And I get what they're doing, but maybe if this was shinier, I don't know. But this box doesn't do it for me. But if you don't like the box, don't be fooled. The stuff inside's really nice.
Yeah, because the tokens as well are made, I think, of a rewood, so a recycled
right,
wood.
Yeah, it's a special thing that they've done.
And they look really good. The player boards are dual layered, so everything stays in place. And the tiles themselves, because it's the City of Silver, the buildings that you're putting out flip, and they have a sheen silver side or a sheen, like a shiny gold side. Mm-hmm. So, and the score track is like one of the most beautiful score tracks because it is super shiny but still really legible. So I think they really tried to incorporate like the silver aspect with having like the gold and silver in it.
The one thing I will say is this is a little tighter than I would like. It's already getting a little worn here, and that's after 5 plays. So when you pull them, they're a little tighter than I would like. It's a little thing, and it's still going to work. It's just going to have little nicks here and there. So that is one thing, just if you really like things to be pristine. This is not going to be, once you've played this 12 times, this is not going to be pristine. It's just going to have a little wear. But you know what? That shows that you played it. So there's pluses and minuses, I guess.
And the cards, though, were a lot easier to just move because you have to move them all the time. And the way the holder is done makes it super easy to slide. So that was really good because I think that's a change they may have done since UKG as well, was just figuring out like how to slide the cards.
Right, yeah. The first time that we played it was on a prototype. How do you think it plays? So 2 players, we've primarily played this 2 players. We have played it once with 3 players. How do you feel they've adapted it for 2 players?
They have made it a 2-player game or a 3 to 4-player game, basically. If you're playing 2 players, you use a different side of the board, so it makes the mine smaller, it makes the city building area smaller as well, compared to the other side, which is for 3 or 4, where everything is just bigger. The other key thing is for 2 players, there's this event deck that you use, and it's a super simple card that goes out for each round. So at the end of each round, various things will happen. So at the start, the tax rate might go up, but it often has to do with the building market, and it's a way of being able to change the building market a little bit more. So sometimes moving some of the buildings to the bottom or to the end of the rows, and all of that is pretty important in a 2-player game where it might get a little bit stale.
Yeah, it's good too because it's a market shifting thing, but you don't know how the market's going to shift because most games have it a 2-player just move the stuff at the end. But it's nice that it's like sometimes it moves the stuff, sometimes it gets rid of buildings. It does it in different, sometimes it just shuffles the different stacks. So you can't really plan ahead like you couldn't if you had a 3rd player. And playing it at 2, it just, it feels perfectly comfortable and like there's not a lot missing. I will say though, at 3 or 4, hopefully you won't have as much of that situation where one person controls something like the wood or the coal and then they're holding on to that and not moving that up, because you'll have 2 people who control each thing. Especially at 4, you'll have 2 people who control everything, so then you got 2 different chances for people to build stuff. So the market's going to be a little bit more interesting, I think, and you won't be able to like fully manipulate it how you want to manipulate it because someone else is manipulating what you have. So I think it would be really fun to play at 4, and it plays quick enough that 4 is not going to be a problem.
Yeah, because the other difference that I forgot to mention is at 2 players, it's 6 rounds. And even then, we just still feel at the end like we want to do so much more. There's so many times at the end that we wish we just had like 2 more cards, because each round you get 5 actions, but it goes so quickly. And so at 3 or 4, you're only getting 5 rounds. So I imagine you can't do as much. And in terms of replayability, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest part of the replayability is each game you only have 3 of these buildings that you are able to build and are like in control of that part of the market, and those change each time. They got a whole bunch of cards that switch that up, and that is by far going to be the biggest part, because there's like 4 buildings of each. There's 12 of these fancy buildings, or 15 or whatever there is, and we've made sure that we have a different 3 each time we've played. And it has felt quite a bit different. Yeah,
because there are a few games in a row where I didn't have the wood one. And I know that's what sets the price for building. So that's why last time I was like, okay, whatever I want the wood one for sure. So that, you're right, that is the biggest key aspect. And because the market is so fluctuating, each game is going to be completely different for how expensive things are, what you're building when, where even the tiles get placed randomly at the beginning, like which one is going to be the cheapest will most likely be the one that you'll build first. So even just the small bit of how they go out at the very start, that might influence a little bit how you begin.
So finally, who is this for? And I think there's a lot of gamers who are going to get quite a bit out of this game, because it fits that nice space where it's a little heavier maybe than some folks are used to, but not so much heavier, where I think they're still really going to be interested in this and get a lot out of it. But also it gives enough for those people who want that heavier experience, but not at like that huge kind of exhausting, like after you play this, you don't need a nap. You can play this and still want to play something else.
Yeah, I agree. It is that right level of complexity if you're not looking for a heavy game, but still want a bit of like depth to a game for sure. I do think if you get frustrated at not being in control, that this may not be a game for you, because if you don't have that guild, or if you do what somebody else also does, you know, the value of it is going to be so out of your hands. And so you're just going to have to make do with what is the best option available at the time, and you won't be able to plan for something.
Yeah, and there's a lot of math in this, because as you're regularly adding up your income, you're doing a lot of multiplying this by this and this by this. It was nothing that we found too difficult, and the losing control was also something that I did not have any problem with at all. Even at the worst, where I could not build for like 2 rounds, it was still super fun. I don't usually like market games, and I like this, and I like the building is fun and engaging. There was a lot that I liked about this.
Yeah, I agree. And on top of everything you said, really how it looks, I just really like silver and gold shininess, and the buildings and the score track and everything, and even the like little wooden pieces. It all looks really good. So I think we'll be playing this a lot more. Yeah,
it's very silver and gold. Burrow Lives would love this, and I give it like 4 Burrow Liveses.
We don't even know what the scale of Burrow Lives is.
It's the classic Burrow Lives scale.
But thank you so much for watching. Please let us know in the comments if you've played Kutna Hora, and as usual, please like, subscribe, and hopefully we'll see you next time for another game.